you have an ability, because it's only based off of age. You might not have athletic ability, but you have a financial ability. Every person does that works. And so that's the first step. NFL football players and Olympic ice skaters and gymnasts, they're all in their primes in their early 20s. And the same is true for finances.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Alday Townsend, your host. This podcast is for doers, dreamers, and those trying to decide what's next. I, along with amazing guests, will be sharing stories of success, failure, and what's to come. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Alday Townsend, your host. I'm so excited today about the conversation we're going to be having with Scott. It's all about financial literacy and having epiphanies. And I believe this episode is coming out at the beginning of the year. So it's a great time for us to set those budgets, develop a really great spending habit, saving habit, and really create an amazing opportunity for you to live the dream life that you want to in the future, or maybe by the end of the year. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Scott before I welcome him. He is a financial coach and the author of Financial Epiphany. He has spent 25 years mastering the art of clear communication. As the head of video communications for a Fortune 15 company, he simplifies complex ideas for over 300,000 employees worldwide on a regular basis. Now he brings the same clarity to personal finance. Through his 3 breakthrough rules of thumb, he coaches audiences to feel empowered to take control of their finances by choosing a simple and creative path to financial wellness. I'm super excited. Scott, thanks for joining me. I'm so excited to be here with you and have just great combo.
Hey, Jenny, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Okay, so I love asking this question so that our listeners really can engage and get to know who they're listening to. So can you share with our listeners what season of life you're in?
Yeah, absolutely. Some would say it's midlife, mid-career. I am married. I have a son that is 16 years old, and he is taking his SAT tests and getting ready for college to some degree. But yeah, that's where we're at. We're at that point where we're looking back and seeing how we've done, and we're looking forward and seeing what we should continue doing and what we should change.
That's awesome. How long have you and your wife been married?
It's been 22 years.
22 years. Oh my goodness. My husband and I have been
Yeah.
married for almost 13 years.
Congratulations
It's a roller coaster.
to us both. We both deserve congratulations there.
Does your
Way
wife
to stick it out.
does your wife
She
also work in the
does.
financial world?
No, she is in the biotech industry and she studied biology, and she is very detail oriented, works from home, and is very good at what she does.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, I'm excited to learn from you today. So tell us a little bit about this financial epiphany and how you got into it and what we can expect to learn from you today.
Yeah, sure thing. About a decade ago, I was just like many other Americans and didn't feel like I understood personal finance. I felt like it wasn't for me. I felt like I was an imposter, in fact. But I decided to get over that hump and study it to some degree. I felt like I owed it to myself, my wife, and my family. And so I got over the basics, learned things about debt and a mortgage and college savings and retirement savings, kind of all the basics. And I realized it wasn't so bad. In fact, as I picked up dozens of books, I found myself writing in the margins, even to the point where some people said, I think you need to start writing your own book. I started developing my own ideas because I do have a creative mind and tend to think that way. So as I was developing my own ideas, I realized as I put some of these practices into work, they were actually working for our family. So I call them the 3 financial epiphanies. We can get into those later. But I realized finances wasn't so bad and felt very empowered, very confident as applying my own angle on things really was working, because finance is actually, it's not just about making money and spending money and saving money, about dealing with this object. It's actually behavior. And that's what I want to share with people, is that we can change our behavior and we can figure out mindsets that allow us to succeed with this thing that we formerly felt we were an imposter for. So I became a financial coach, spent 3 years writing a book, Financial Epiphany, and now I'm out there just sharing the message, trying to get people from this place of feeling financially illiterate or financially like it's not confident, and moving it into confident action, because it is for us. We can own this.
Yeah, I love that. So when you talk about you were reading books or you were doing all this research and you were learning about it, can you give us some tips on like how or where you were going? Because I'm assuming you didn't go back to college to learn about finance and money.
No, I actually had studied communications and my career was in communications, video communications and web communications in particular. So, but I was always communicating and I wanted to bring that into the category of personal finance. So, what got me interested is just there was that fear before and the average person is feeling like this is not for them. So I wanted to bring it over. And as I was reading those books, it started with Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert
Right. That's what I wrote.
Kiyosaki.
Some of those books that you were reading that listeners.
Started with that. And it's come all the way to The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. So books like that. In between, what really turned the lights on would have been Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University and his 7 baby steps. So that helps people get out of debt, assuming and realizing that most people are waking up, maybe even at midlife, wondering how have I been doing? And many of us as Americans, we're scared. We have a little bit of guilt. Oh, I think I should have been managing and stewarding my finances. I actually haven't been paying much attention to that. And what's the main message we get about finances every day? It's to buy, it's to spend. The advertising, the marketing. In fact, we're the most advertised to nation on the planet, whether you like it or not. Good for us. And it's $400 billion spent per year. And that's about $1,000 plus per head, even the babies. So
Yeah.
there you go.
One of the budget items that I'm working on with my company of reducing is the marketing budget. I spent $150,000 last year with our company to market
Mm,
music lessons, and it's
mm,
just insane. And I'm like, I
yeah.
gotta find a better way to do this because I've spent, that's money that could be going to wage increases. It could be going back into the
Mm,
business.
yeah.
So, you know, so while we're having this conversation, I own a company and we have 30 employees that work for us, and obviously I have parents and they have different routes that they went their divorce, and I have my in-laws and how they handle their finances and everything. And personally, our company has had a reduction in membership sales. And so like our cash flow is completely different today than it was like 3 months ago, even 6 months ago. And when I'm looking back, prior to this expansion, we did a massive expansion that I took $150,000 cash and paid for it myself versus taking a loan from the bank. And the reason I did that is because I didn't wanna pay interest. It was, like,
Yeah.
a substantial
Oh,
mortgage payment for the loan, so I was like, "I'll just fund it myself." So I did that
yes.
last year, but, like, for the years prior, all of that money was just sitting in my bank account, and it wasn't earning interest, and I wasn't doing anything with it. Now I'm, like, here in this slump financially with low cash flow, and I'm like, "Oh my god, if I would've just invested that money." So obviously I can't go back. My husband always says, "You can't go back and change it." So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say so that others don't make the same mistake that I did. And there's different tools and there's different ways to get your money to work for you. So let's just jump right into talking about ourselves and what you would recommend the listeners to consider thinking about, or the epiphanies that you have if you want to share those, but anything that would get us thinking about money differently and that would encourage us to either start investing, saving, or changing our spending habits.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the epiphanies and then we can see how these apply to some of those situations you were talking about. Okay, so if most people, let's throw out some numbers here. So about 78% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. Most of us, about 77% of us are in debt. And there's a low level of financial literacy when basic financial literacy tests are taken. So Americans in general, we're kind of struggling, but we're not showing it. And one of the reasons why is we look good on the outside, right? So we own the cars, we have the electronics, we're taking the vacations, our Facebook and Instagram lives look amazing as we put our best foot forward. However, that's not really what's happening behind the hood. So we're all kind of doing this together to look like our best selves, and we're spending in order to get there, to create an image. So when I discovered that's what's really happening, as a communicator, I realized, wow, I want to come over from the area of communication in that industry over to finance, and let's communicate just what people need to hear. People don't want to be overwhelmed. They don't want to be intimidated. In fact, we are. I know I was. I acted very timidly with money and felt like it wasn't for me. In fact, when I grew up, my mom said, talking about money is like talking about your underwear. And what she meant by that is that it was a private topic. We don't talk about these things. And so you're struggling, silently suffering, figuring this thing out for yourself when we could be talking about it. So I want to thank you for bringing me on to help spread the word and encourage people to go out and do this, because we're all looking around what we think someone else is doing and going off of that. So all we need is 3 rules of thumb, really, to just move the needle, right? From where we all are together in mass to financially confident. So there's 3 rules of thumb. All we got to do is make money freeze. It's got so many variables, your interest rates and your age, when we're talking about retirement, how long you work for. There's so many numbers swirling around our head. We got to make it freeze. And so what you do is you just look at the most common circumstance. You create a rule of thumb that way. So the average person starts a career around age 22, works for 40 years, and earns about a 7.2% rate of return on average between stocks, bonds, index funds, mutual funds, these common ways of investing. And I like to talk about things in terms of a 401k retirement plan or individual retirement account, retirement, because that's where we're going to be making potentially the biggest financial choice and behavior in our lives, besides buying a house or maybe running a business like yourself. So if we freeze money like that, then we can find out a set of 3 principles that stacks on top of that. I call them financial epiphanies. All right. So if you start work at 22, work for 40 years, earn a 7.2% rate of return over the long run, money actually doubles every 10 years. So if you put $1,000 in, and you wait 10 years, what's happening? And you're not doing anything else to it. It actually doubles to 2,000 all on its own. And that there is something that we need to be able to internalize, because now we have some sort of metric, something to go off of that doesn't change because it's just math. Money doubles every 10 years. So $1,000 untouched turns to 2,000. That's the first epiphany. The second epiphany builds upon that, because who works for 10 years? Typically, we said people work a 40-year career. So if money doubles every 10 years, add on another 10 years, and that 2,000 doubles to 4,000. Add another 10 years, that 4,000 doubles to 8,000. And then 10 years later, 8,000 is doubling to 16,000. So now we know an input at the beginning of our careers, $1,000 in turns to $16,000 later. It's multiplying by 16 times. Now we have this other metric that is lasting the duration of our careers. And I like to flip it around and say people have the power of 16 when they start their careers, because it's not about multiplying an object, money. It's about an ability we have now, like athletic ability, that we're at our primes when we start our careers. And the third epiphany is that multiplying power halves every 10 years from there. So it goes from the multiplying power of 16, 10 years later it's 8, 10 years later it's 4, 2, and then hopefully we're enjoying the fruits of our labor when we retire. But when you do that, it takes advantage of loss aversion. It gets us to act, because we're now realizing what's happening. Our multiplying power is halving under the most common circumstances of investing every 10 years. And it tells us to act. It tells us to not squander this ability that we have, but to steward it and to take action. So it creates that sense of urgency that we all know we need. So those are the 3 financial epiphanies.
So as I'm thinking, or as you're talking, I'm like, oh, I really wish that my parents, when I was young, would have just started this account for me, right? Of put $1,000 in there. And there may be parents that actually already do this for their children. My parents did not. My parents did not know about finances, and they were very young when they got married. They had children at a very young age, and then they just started working, and they made a lot of money, but they never actually saved or invested any money. And my parents are still working, and they say they're still working by choice and they love what they do, but there's a sense that maybe it's because they still have to work as well.
Sure.
And then my husband's family, they retired, at 60 or 65. They did the 40-year work year thing, and then they were able to retire and then, live comfortably and travel and do what they want. I mean, they weren't doing lavish trips, but they were still able to travel. So you have like 2 different households. If there's something that we could do right now, like let's just say maybe we're in our 20s, we're in our 30s, or we're in our 40s, we don't have that fund already started. How do we get that started? Or what could we do now with if you are living paycheck to paycheck, or hey, you have an extra $1,000 a month?
Right. Right. So the advice out there is save early, right? We know that's out there. So we've just quantified it now by creating 3 rules of thumb. Now we know the numbers of what's happening. Albert Einstein is credited as saying compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And that's what we're talking about here. Compound interest, or this compounding growth, this multiplying upon multiplying upon multiplying that can happen to our finances if we put our money on that train. You know, we can have it sitting, earning nothing, hardly anything in a savings or checking account. So what we want to do is first get people excited about that ability, right? To own this, to change the mindset. It's not an object you're accumulating. This is this ability that you have that diminishes over time, right? So first there's that mindset change, and telling someone, like a coach to an athlete, like you own this. So the first thing is I like that, to deal with the mindset thing and tell someone you're like an athlete. You have an ability, because it's only based off of age. You might not have athletic ability, but you have a financial ability. Every person does that works. And so that's the first step. You know, NFL football players and Olympic ice skaters and gymnasts, they're all in their primes in their early 20s. And the same is true for finances. We may think this big myth of, oh, when I'm older, wiser, make more money, that's when I'll learn about this. But under the most common circumstances of life, we're actually in our prime, in our early 20s when we start working. Okay, so that's the mindset thing, right? And if we have bad grades in school and can't play on the sports team at school, that's kind of like having debt, because the world will serve us debt. If we don't have a plan, we'll just fall right into it. There's a path I call the path of snares and traps. And it starts with credit cards, and it goes through car loans and borrowing to spend $10,000 extra on a wedding, and college loans,
All make
and
those
then
mistakes.
condo. Yeah, they're just lined up ready for
to.
us.
But we
Yep.
don't listen.
They're ready for us. And in fact, I mean, we can't blame our economy or ourselves too much, because that's how we run. That's why we're such a successful nation, is because we build amazing products and services and we sell them to each other. We just don't know when to exercise this sort of self-control to actually put a stop to our accustomed situation. But yeah, just like if someone had bad grades and they can't play sports, you tell them, get your grades up. You have to get your grades up, because you have this ability. You can be the star player. You're the best you can ever be right now. And if you want to play, you got to get your grades up. So there's the motivation part, because finances is behavior. And so you start with that. So you tell people, okay, we got to get you out of debt. You got these various debts. Let's say you got one of each. Your smallest one is your credit card. Okay. How are you going to find some money to pay off this? $6,000 is the average amount rolled over month to month for a credit card. So how are we going to pay this thing off? And maybe it's spread across 2 or 3 credit cards. So you can knock out the $1,000 one first. Knock out the smallest one, the low-hanging fruit, right? And how do you do that? You're going to stop subscriptions temporarily. You could get some gig work or overtime, increase your income. Or for a lot of people, if you have started a retirement account, that's actually where money is going every month, that you can actually temporarily pause. If you're putting hundreds of dollars into retirement, you can actually pause that. And I'm a huge fan. I'm the biggest fan of multiplying your money within a retirement account. But if it's like juggling, if you're paying multiple debts off as well, and you're not going to see progress unless you try to knock these things out smallest to biggest. So you can put a pause on the retirement account temporarily, pay off that $1,000 credit card, and then now you have extra money because it's not going toward interest. Then you pay off the $2,000 one. Then you pay off the $3,000 one. Next might be the car loan, and then bigger ones like the student loan. And then over time, finally, your mortgage, but that one's going to take years typically. So
Yeah. Speaking of student loans in college, it seems like college is very expensive. And there is a lot of, this is just my personal opinion, there's a lot of young kids, adults that are, coming out of high school that don't know what they want to do for a career. And that could be because they didn't have a job during high school. They haven't been exposed to enough mentors. They've been sheltered with just their parents. Kids are a little bit different these days as well with COVID. They're not as outgoing, or they're not as social, or they don't want to be out. And there's different ways of making money as well. So But there's still this philosophy that you need to go to college, and I feel like a lot of them are going to college and then not knowing what they want to do, and they're taking all of these student loans, and then they're just stuck with it, and then it's like they get a degree that they're not even really sure that they wanna even use. Do you have any advice when it comes to college and the financing of it or funding it, or how to avoid having large student loans when you get out of college? 'Cause I have people that work for me, and they have student loans, and it's just it's such a damper, especially because of how expensive they are, and they don't get a job making XYZ. They're not able to actually live and pay the regular bills plus the student loan. So how can we avoid that?
Yeah, so we talked about that default path of snares and traps, right? Now, all these things are positives, having a car, going to college, owning a home. But there are people ready to make as much money off of us as they can if we don't have a plan. We all want to work together and have this balance. They should make money if we're going to their school and be able to pay their staff and things like that. But we also want to be financially healthy and be able to retire with dignity and peace at some point in time. So we can talk about a few different perspectives on this. So 60% of Americans will take out a college loan. It's the majority, right? It's normal. But it's also assumed, like you say, that we're just going to go down this path, whether we have a plan or not, meaning we know what our degree is, we know what we want to do as a career. We may be going to school because we look around and we say, well, that's what I'm going to do. That's what most people are doing, or that's what the people around in my circles are doing. So that's what I'm going to do. But we need to be extremely intentional about these things. Now, we may wake up and we're already in school and we've already agreed to a loan, right? So we just talked about how to pay things off and to get extremely aggressive about that. We could take our time, but if you have a multiplying power that is diminishing every 10 years by half, now you've quantified why you got to act. So there's the motivator. If you're partway through, right? You just got to go at this thing and increase your income, decrease your expenses, even if it's just for a season of time. And you got to get on that playing field if you're sitting in the classroom trying to get from a D or F up to a C grade. The other thing is backing up entirely and saying, all right, well, here's a teenager, or here's someone in the single digits of age, 7, 8, 9. And I'll tell the story of my son as an example, what we do in our family. So if you want to be financially savvy and do something about this now, I'm glad you're listening, everybody out there, is that you have time to actually make some decisions, right? You don't have to follow the path of snares and traps. So we started saving for my son's college education. So a 529 college savings plan, which has tax advantages and market growth. So you can get that 7.2% rate of return we were talking about. We started when he was 7. This was around the time that I developed these 3 financial epiphanies. We stopped saving at age 9. And my wife said to me, what are we doing? She came from a place of wanting financial security. That's my job, is to try to provide that as a husband. And I'm the visionary. She executes. She pays the bills. I come up with the plan, right? And I develop the 3 financial epiphanies. That's my job. And so we were going to apply this in real life to our own family and put it into practice. We're going to stop at age 9. Why? Don't we need to keep saving until our son goes to college? That made her feel insecure. But she trusted me. And what we did was from 7 till 9, my son's age, we saved and front loaded a college savings plan, and we stopped because I knew money doubles every 10 years. And so it in fact did. He's 16 right now, and he's had enough money to go to an in-state school for many, many years because we stopped at 9. The money grew faster than tuition did, and now he's got more than he needs to do that. And now my wife is a believer. She says, oh my goodness, money doubles every 10 years. And I've witnessed that. And you showed it to me over these past, it was more like 8 years that it took to double. Now she wants to do all these other things for our son. And I'm like, whoa, he's not a trust fund baby. We want him to work. We don't want to just multiply this money for him ready to go. And so that's an example of how it can be applied if you get started early. If we had got started even earlier before, instead of money doubling, it could have doubled and doubled again. We could have just saved half of a half when you work backwards. So now this gives us the understanding, the motivation, and just the easiest rule of thumb so we can take action. Money doubles every 10 years. Why would I want to work 2, 4, 8 times harder later if I can just set this aside now? Now I know what's happening.
I want to encourage you to get my book, The Stroke It Guide, available on Amazon and my website. The book is what you need to know from the boardroom to the bedroom. It talks about how to stroke yourself, your spouse, your partner, your friends, your family, most importantly, your employer, employees, and of course, there's a chapter just for the bedroom. Go to Amazon today and get my book, The Stroke It Guide. So are you open to sharing a little bit of how much money you invested between that 7 to 9 and where it is today?
You want to hear some numbers?
I do want to hear some numbers. If you're cool
Yeah.
with sharing it. If you're not, don't feel like you have to. Just to give our audience an idea, because you're saving for years and to have this financial free up basically for him to do whatever he wants with that, whether it's to go to college, start a business, whatever, or buy an investment property, or maybe there's something else he could do with it. Just to kind of inspire our listeners.
Let's make it real. Let's throw some numbers out there.
Okay.
So, and I'll just say it not as if it's me. I'll just say a general sense as if it's someone else out there. But let's say for ages 7, 8, 9, for your son or daughter, you set aside $10,000. So you stop after you have $30,000. And then we say that money can double every 10 years. So that 30 is doubling into 60. Now, like I said, that could happen even sooner than you expected. So if tuition is, say now the average amount of borrowed money is around $40,000. Okay. So it's solving that problem, right? So now if we have $60,000, it's covering $40,000 that would have been borrowed, right?
Yeah.
You're covered. And now what I'm saying also is because, my son is 16, or because you have done this thing early, well, you're riding the wave of the market. And we know that artificial intelligence and other things have come out, and our economy doing so well unexpectedly. Even during COVID, we had a bad year, but then we had many good years. Is that you're on that wave, you're riding it, you plugged in early. And so the money can double faster than that. Or because he's not in school yet, and you get to keep money invested until they're out of school. And here's a bonus for parents and kids, is leftover money can be put into an individual retirement account. You're starting them on the right leg and the right foot and starting them with a retirement account early that they're not even working for to put money in yet, and it's multiplying for them. That's amazing. That is incredible. So I guess with that story, you can end up with even more money than you need, or if our son actually is interested in a master's or PhD now. So, that changes the narrative a little bit. There could be some more money that we need, but it's either there or it's ready to flip into a retirement account now. And then that really sets him up for the rest of his life as well.
Yeah, no, that's really, really great. So essentially, if people are living paycheck to paycheck right now, or they're thinking, yeah, Scott, I would love to have this much money.
Yeah.
Basically, what you're saying is cut down your spending, maybe do an audit on your finances to see where the money is going, and reduce that so that you can actually take some of this money, invest it, and find. Now, these are accounts you would find at your local banks. Where are you putting this money so that it gets the compounding and it can double over 10 years?
Right. So backing up to retirement, hopefully you're one of those fortunate people that works at a place where a 401k plan is provided through your human resources department. So that's got the biggest bonus, because not only is it tax advantage, market growth, but you might have company matching as well, where you're getting free money. Okay, so let's talk about that as retirement. Now, outside of that, if you're starting your own account, or say doing something like this college savings plan, I like to mention discount brokerage firms. So you're talking about Charles Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity. So these places that you can go in and deal with finances your own via creating an account and a login. You can still meet with people, but it's called a discount brokerage firm because they are allowing you to do some things on yourself. You're not necessarily being handheld and having someone to manage all this and do all this for you. It's a great entry point for the average person, is to start something there. And I also want to back up and say, okay, let's say you don't have $10,000 extra every year to put into a 529 plan. That's okay, because that was a plan that would have covered the average college loan. But maybe you want to save up something that covers half of college, or a quarter, or just something, right? So you can do what you can do. But what I recommend is doing something and setting up an account, because when part of this is because it's behavior, it's understanding the psychology of money, that when you do this and you look back and you see money doubled, that's one of the greatest lessons you can understand about finances for your whole life. And then you're going to apply that elsewhere. You're going to be on the offensive rather than having your money feel like it's being taken from you and leaking. You're going to be multiplying it, and you're going to be confident in owning this thing. So I suggest go ahead and do it at any size, investing that is.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's can be overwhelming and hard too, though, if you're like, oh, I don't have this money, or, but it's, you have to start at some point. Otherwise, you're going to be working forever. And there's got to be something like, there's just like everyone has Amazon packages delivered 24/7. Like when
Got it.
I have so many team members that come in with like the venti Starbucks. I'm like, get a tall. Like, why are you spending $10 a day on this Starbucks, right? Like,
Are you talking to my wife right now? She's the coffee fan.
so
I'm going to have her hear that. I'm going to hear her listen to that.
or they come with these monster drinks. Or another thing that drives me bonkers is that they eat out every day. Like they'll pick up food on the way, and I'm thinking, oh my God, meal prep. Like there's so many things. I mean, we could talk about it all day long, I'm sure. But I feel like there's probably like 4 or 5 ways that we're wasting money every single day that can be put into a savings account, or put into an envelope, or put into a jar to where you can start investing. But I think it comes back to the behavior and changing those habits and saying
Oh,
no
yeah.
to wasting versus yes to investing. And if you weren't really brought up in a home, or you weren't really taught this, and once again, I think too, people just like showing up to meetings with a Starbucks because they think it looks cool.
It's part of life. It's part of our
That
culture. It's
image that you were
normalized.
talking about.
Yeah, normalized.
So anyway, so I'm really hoping that people that are listening today will. I was just having a conversation with a client yesterday, and we were talking about different audits, and I was like, sometimes you just got to do a time audit and really see where you're spending your time and what matters and what's a waste of it. And so, I'm doing this financial audit right now within our company, and I'm having to do it personally because I'm personally being impacted by the struggle of the company as well. So there's all kinds of uh things that are happening right now. But I also think becoming aware of it and becoming honest with yourself and facing it versus just swiping the credit card, I'll deal with it later, or it's not a big deal. Because then I think you're just worse off. Well, you are. I don't even think you are. So I don't know if you have.
We owe it to ourselves. This is actually, it's finances is not someone else's job to tell you what to do. It's your own job. You owe it to yourself, your spouse if you're married, your family, and even the community, because we want to get you to a place where you're financially healthy, to where you can pour back into the community
100%.
and not just be struggling with your own needs and finances. So that's the idea. I like to call it taking us from products and prices to people and purpose. And really that's kind of the end game, is that when we get over wanting all this stuff for ourselves, instant gratification, then we really can have an inventory of money to put towards really our purpose. Many of us might feel like we're on this earth for a reason, and we want to do something about that. We may have a gift that we can apply and just give back. And that ultimately, when you look at people that do have plenty of finances, they ultimately seem to get into, not everybody, but to get into giving back, right? And that is an amazing aspect of life. In fact, my son's bank account, that's divided up into 3 parts, has spend and save and give. And so that's, being introduced into his life from the very beginning. And so to really lean into, when we start our lives, a lot of it has to be spend. Okay, we have our bills, we have our mortgage and loans to pay off, and all these things of life. But to be able to, that's not what we want to be really focused on our whole entire life. If we can lean more into, over time, get to this place of health, because we've multiplied our finances, where we can lean more into give and purpose and use my gift to make a change in the world. Boy, that is investing in your future.
It's a
To not just like stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to mention 2 things in addition to what you were saying. So with the whole Starbucks thing too, I think parents need to stop buying Starbucks for their kids as well, and stop going to Starbucks, because what they're doing is they're setting that norm that everyone
Modeling behavior.
toward it. They're going to model it. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
even the teenagers that work for us are like, Starbucks. I'm like, you're making like $14 an hour. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
it's going to
Yeah.
cost you with this venti drink. Basically, you're
Yeah.
working just to buy Starbucks. So, but it's amazing how many parents I see that are buying their kids Starbucks. And I understand it's like a
Yeah.
special treat. Maybe they're not doing it all the time, but I think it's more
Hmm.
common than not. So they're modeling that behavior where they think that they need it as well to go
Hmm.
to work or to a meeting or
Yeah.
which I don't know, I just kind of disagree with. I have an
Hmm.
espresso machine, which is kind of expensive, but it's at home. It's only $1.20 per pod. And
Yeah.
the other thing I
Yeah.
wanted to
It
mention
helps.
too was money mindset. So
Mm.
when I first started my company, and I have to like use this mindset shift again right now to 10 years later. I was walking on the beach with a team member and I was like, I just can't afford to pay myself. We just
Mm.
don't have the money and all this. She looked at me and she goes, with a poor mindset, you're always going to be poor.
Mm.
And she goes, you have to have an abundant mindset. You have to say that you do have the money to pay yourself and you are worthy of paying yourself and you are
Yeah.
investing in yourself. And that mindset shift was huge. After I had that conversation with her and a conversation with my mentor, I added myself to
Mhm.
payroll. And I never
Mhm.
had a problem paying myself ever. I was like, it was a mindset. I was
Yeah.
the one that was preventing myself from being paid. And then once I
Mhm.
started paying myself, I changed as a leader, and a lot of other things had changed in my life as well. And so I think
Mhm.
it's too, if you have like a poor mindset with money, and my
Yeah.
mom's family, they have a poor mindset with money. So anytime money is mentioned, it's like
Mm.
panic, stress, negativity, and they're always all fighting about money, even though they all have money. So I think the mindset shift is really huge when it comes to money as well.
Yeah, that abundance mindset that you talk about, that growth mindset, it is so key because here's a common path. Okay, we're going to go through the path of snares and trap. We didn't have a plan. Our parents didn't know how to tell us about money. And that's why I want to equip parents with the three financial epiphanies so that they have this really easy rules of thumb to pass down to the kids. And it just works. It works for the rest of your life. It's math. But if we follow this path of snares and traps, then we finally get to that point where we're like, oh, I need to figure out this money thing. Like my kids got to go to college. I might want to retire one day. I think my parents need financial help as well. So you're going to run into this day of reckoning that's coming with money if you haven't chosen to learn it before, right? So now we've got this debt. Now we're like, oh, it's midlife. I have to figure this money thing out. And now we're in this place where we're finding ourselves kind of behind the eight ball. We're a little ashamed that we didn't do this earlier, right? And so there's that mindset shift of now we feel guilty or we're looking for someone to share the blame with because I don't want to hold this thing. But we got to wake up to that, right? There's this point where we wake up, and I woke up 10 years ago and I said, okay, I got to figure this thing out. I've been acting timidly with money. I had to figure it out. And I'm telling you right now, as an empowered and a very confident person now with finances, is that I was at that point too, where I didn't get it. I felt like an imposter. And I was afraid of looking at what I had been doing and I was a little embarrassed. But start now if you haven't started already and get going because it's not someone else's job. It actually is yours and you can do this. We owe it to ourselves and our families. And once again, the three financial epiphanies and the ability to multiply money, it's your ability. So get out there, get started, even to a small degree, and you'll love over time because it does take time. You'll love the results.
Yeah, I think that is taking ownership of it and not expecting it from somebody else as well. And I always say, like, money is just not going to fall from the sky. There's not a money tree out there. My husband, for a little while, I actually wrote a song and performed it at my music school because it was like some days he was just thinking this money tree and this opportunity was just going to fall from the sky or Amazon was going to deliver it. And I was like, no, you've got to go out there and make it. And that's where I feel like you have to take ownership of it. And for anybody that's an employee that's out there, like you have to make smart financial decisions. Like you can't expect your employer to make up the difference for your bad decisions. Like I said before, I don't know if we were recording or not, where I had an employee go and buy a brand new car and spend a $600 car payment, and I was like, "You cannot afford a $600 car payment." And then 3 months later, "Ah, I need a raise. I had to move. I had to get," and it's like,
Hmm. Hmm.
I can't pay for your poor financial decisions. Like that is not the company's responsibility. The company is to pay you a wage that is market share or and for you to balance those finances on your own. And my husband and I, we have multiple revenue streams, and we don't depend on just one of our jobs to fund our entire lives. Uh, and I think other people have that, but there is a demographic that, they only want to work their 30 hours a week. They're totally content. They're not thinking about the future. So hopefully this will inspire them to begin thinking about the future and how they can
Hmm.
start investing and compounding their money. Because we're gonna have to wrap up in the next, like, 5 or so minutes, I do
Mhm.
want to ask you a question, and this could probably be an entire episode, so I'm sorry that I'm waiting till, like, the last minute to ask you this. But if you had any tips for spouses, so money is a main concern when it comes to relationship. It is a pain point for many marriages. A lot of people fight over money, they get divorced
Yeah.
over money. If there was someone listening today and they're or married and this is a pain point, what would be a couple things that you would talk to them about or suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. And to start someplace and emphasize multiplying power, I like the idea of each individual finding out their multiplying power, because I think that's a silver bullet. If you understand that you have an ability, it kind of empowers you with this. It's a superpower that you didn't know you had. So let's say we have people in their early 30s, and I call that the power of eight at that time, right? So starting the career with power 16. Let's say a couple's been married 10 years, they're in their 30s, and they have this power of eight. They got to both recognize this, right? Wow, we have this ability, and get on the same page and feel empowered. Because when you have an ability, you're more likely to do something. You didn't use the B word, budget, but you talked about taking a pause and taking inventory of what's happening in your life. So your expenses and your income. So to do a budget. And I hate budgets. As a person who does finance, it's something that I like to tell people. You don't have to love budgets, and you might not be the type that has to do them all the time. I've done it once. So I got an inventory, actually twice. So, but an inventory of where you're at, right? And then you take action from there. So, okay, understand your multiplying power. And then that gives you this something to work with. You're not starting at negative or zero as far as your self-worth. You have an ability once again. And so now we got to just coach ourselves into taking action with it. You might want to come alongside and have accountability partners, even a financial coach. And there are folks that work as financial coaches out there to help you be accountable and take these first early steps, which can be hard. It's hard to get started with anything and create new behaviors. But keeping each other accountable, whether it's a coach or your spouse, is an amazing thing. And sitting down and having those monthly, okay, where we're at. Remember, you're a team. And
Yeah.
once again, if I talk about athletes and abilities and sports and all this, you're a team and you want to win this thing together. You got to work together to make this happen.
Yeah, I think that I having these conversations is really, really important. I had a woman, I think the first season of my podcast, and she talked about budget dates, like dates with her spouse where they talk financials, where it's like it's not over
Yeah.
us dinner when I'm cooking, it's not when we're walking and having quality time together. It's not when we're out to dinner on a date, like dedicating that specific time to talk about money and doing it really, really frequently. And
Mhm. Yeah.
also
Yeah.
admiring the value that both of the people bring to the table. So, if you are married too, typically you'll have one parent that's a stay-at-home parent that's doing all the household roles. I always say the CHO, Chief Household Officer, and then you have one that's like actually going outside of the home to contribute to that family as well. And I think it's important to understand each other's value and what they bring to the table as well. Because I think sometimes that's a pain point when it comes to money and
Yeah.
one spouse not feeling appreciated for the value that they're contributing
Mm.
to that family, whether it's a financial contribution or it's time and energy, which is just as valuable, I think, as
Oh
the
yeah.
the actual monetary money that's bringing to that table. So anyways, well, thank you for all that. I had a lot of just people that are married that listen to the podcast
Yeah.
because podcast was inspired by my marriage failing. Not that it was failing because of the financials, but it's really, really important. And my husband and I, we come from completely different upbringings where our parents managed money completely different.
Yeah.
So I'm very much like, risk it all. Let's go follow our dreams. Let's go travel. Let's go live it up. And he's like, we need to
Mhm.
save this much money. We have to have this much money in the bank account before we can actually do anything. And I'm like,
Mm.
So we now have a nice mixture of travel fund and then saving, investing, and building up those revenue streams. So
All right.
yeah,
Good to hear.
not that we have it all figured out because there's still more to
Mm.
figure out for sure.
It's discovery all along the way, and you're just trying to optimize, right? You're not going to get perfect. You're just trying to optimize. That's all.
100%. So, well, I really have appreciated our conversation today. If there was one tip or piece of advice that you could give our listeners today about financial literacy, becoming independent and beginning to start investing in their future, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah. I would be remiss if I did not repeat the rules of thumb. So, because I want everybody to have this simple takeaway, right? So, under the most common circumstances, a single investment of money can double every 10 years, right? Money can double every 10 years. So, let's lock away with that. Across our 40-year career, when we start our career, we start with the power of 16, the multiplying power of 16 with money. That is incredible. That's powerful. And then the third epiphany is that multiplying power halves every 10 years. Those are the three rules of thumb. And if we can internalize that, they can last for a lifetime. So I want to equip everybody by just repeating that. And hopefully that's simple enough to walk away with and start putting that to use.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. If our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Super easy. I've been using the term financial epiphany throughout our talk here. Financialepiphany.com is where you can go, and you'll find my book there of the same name, Financial Epiphany. This podcast, the link will be on there under the speaking page. So there's lots of resources there, lots of things to listen to, a free download to get the basics, and you can also contact me directly.
Awesome. Well, Scott, you're amazing. Congratulations on all your success and all your wisdom. I really, really appreciate it. And kudos to you and your wife. And I'm looking forward to seeing what your son does in the future. It sounds like you've set him up for success. So I appreciate your time. Thank you all for tuning in today and listening. If this episode was valuable, we would love a 5-star review, or better yet, consider 5 people you can send this podcast to. Wishing you a great day. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in to today's podcast. I want to inspire you to send this podcast to 5 of your friends that you think would benefit.